Marching mighty warriors into the field. The wood is your sword and your faith the shield.
The Vikings were not only the greatest shipbuilders of that age, I mean, they were second to none. They built some of the sleekest, fastest ships for war that any other nation in the world had at that time, in that age. And their ferocity and their braveness, their courage, their strength of character is still today spoken highly of. And if you imagine, they had rowed their own ships to minimize space and the weight of the ship so they could get speed and agility. The ships they built are fascinating, and if you're interested in that kind of thing, you should look it up. But the ship, of course they had sails, but they also had oars. And these same warriors that were about to go to battle had to row that ship close enough to the shore. And so as their arms are falling off, trying to hurry, get to shore before anybody knows what's going on, or before they can gather their armies or whatever, they're rowing those ships, and their arms are probably really sore and tired, and then they get out and they still wield shields and swords and go into battle, and more times than not were victorious. And if you think of the bravery and the courage it would take to ride those kind of ships, even the vessels today, some of the technology that we have in ships today, it's incredible. And yet occasionally a ship still goes down at sea in a storm, and it takes some degree of bravery to face odds that could end up being not in your favor. But warriors have long been riding ships. There's been tribes all around the world that have ridden horses into battle. Even the U.S. cavalry and the American, Native Americans that would fight each other before the Europeans even came to the United States of America, those tribes would fight against each other, and many of them would do so on horseback. You would get Arapaho and the Nez Perce and some of these others that were really great at doing battle on horses. And so warriors have long been riding horses. When technology started to become more advanced, warriors started riding tanks. They would be on top of the machine gun turret and that kind of thing, riding around in Humvees, riding around in armored vehicles for transport and then different things. So warriors started to use things like that. Well, even in like World War II, and I think even in World War I, they would use motorcycles for certain types of reconnaissance, for bringing messages across expanses of land that might have been rough to try and get a jeep through or something. Sometimes they would do spying operations on a motorcycle, and so warriors have long been riding motorcycles. So if you think about that, Viking warriors and the different warriors that have ridden into battle on horseback or in jeeps and tanks and all that kind of stuff. These were people that had great courage, bravery, and intestinal fortitude, meaning guts. These were people that, even though there's potential risk, sometimes that risk was really, really, really high. And yet, in the face of that, they did what they were called to do. They did what they were meant to do. They did what they wanted to do. And in some cases, some of them were forced into it because they were drafted, depending on the military and where in the world and that kind of thing, or the time and that kind of thing. But overall, there's still today, there's a lot of people that wish that they had served in the military. There's a lot of people that wanted to serve in the military, but for one reason or another, they didn't actually do it. They, through either fear that they let overpower them, they decided not to join the military, or through financial obligations, they decided not to join the military, or for whatever reason. So you're doing something, riding a motorcycle, that a lot of people want to do. And that's the whole point, is that warriors have always done things that contain a risk. It's never been completely without risk to be a warrior. And when you ride a motorcycle, you are doing something that a lot of people want to do, but they're afraid to do. I've met a lot of people that say, oh, I'd love to ride a motorcycle, but I'm scared. Well, you know, when I was a kid, the first time I rode a mini bike, I was kind of nervous too. But there's times when traffic is bad, it still kind of makes you being extra careful and things like that. But a lot of people want to do what you do. If you're watching this and you're a motorcycle person like I am, you realize it too. There's a lot of people that love motorcycles. They want to ride motorcycles. But for one type of fear or another, they let that hold them back. I've met people that have said, oh man, I'd love to have you give me a ride. And I'll say, anytime. But then they're afraid. They're afraid to get on the back of the bike. Even when I try and encourage them and tell them, you know, look, I've been riding for 50 years, over 50 years, and haven't killed anybody yet, they're still afraid because that fear overrides their desire to experience something new, to experience something that could ultimately make them feel more free than they could ever imagine. So by riding a motorcycle, yeah, you're taking a risk. There's no doubt about it. Riding a motorcycle is risky. But then again, so is flying in a plane, so is walking down the street, so is driving a car. You know, there's risk to pretty much anything you're going to do. There's people who choke to death and die in restaurants because nobody knew how to do the Heimlich maneuver or saying, and they choked and died before help could get to them that knew what they were doing. So eating could kill you. Now, yeah, the odds are not very high, but anything you do is going to contain risk. But it boils down to, what do you let that fear, or what do you do with those things that would try to deter you from riding, if that's what you want to do, is ride. Warriors, it doesn't mean they don't have fear. Warriors sometimes have fear. As a matter of fact, I met a Vietnam veteran one time that saw some really, really intense combat in Vietnam, and when he would talk to me, I could see it in his eyes, man. It's like parts of it he would relive, and he'd get to a point where he'd have to stop talking because it was bringing up too many painful memories of losing guys in combat and having to kill other men, even though they were the enemy. You know, on people who have a soul, on people who, you know, have some compassion towards other human beings. It takes a toll on you to have to kill another human being, even when they're trying to kill you. And so he told me one time that in Vietnam, that there's people that say that they were in Vietnam and they talk about it like it wasn't a big deal and all that kind of thing. And he said, when you hear that, they either are lying and they weren't there, or they had some cushy job way away from the combat zones and they were never under threat of any kind. So for them, they're completely different. He said, but if somebody said that they were in combat and it didn't affect them and that it wasn't that big of a deal, they're either lying or they're totally that they had went insane. Because he said anybody in the situation that he had to be in, every one of them was afraid. It's what do you do with the fear? If you let that fear overtake you, if you let that fear affect you to the point where you become totally irrational and you don't think like a normal human being anymore, you let your fear destroy you. And the same could be said with motorcycles. If you ride a motorcycle, or you want to ride a motorcycle, and you let all the stories you hear stop you from riding a motorcycle, then the fear won. But you need to win, because warriors fight even when they're afraid. Warriors get it done when the job needs to be done. And if you're riding a motorcycle, it doesn't matter if you ride a Harley, it doesn't matter if you ride a Honda or a Kawasaki or like a Honda Grom or a Honda Goldwing. It doesn't matter if you ride a Kimco scooter or a Suzuki Bergman or even a Vespa. No matter what you ride, if it's on two wheels with a motor attached to that thing, man, you're a warrior, because you're doing something that carries risk. You're doing something that makes you feel free. And you're doing something a lot of people want to do, but they're afraid to do. You, my friend, are a moto warrior. That's what it boils down to. You're actually a warrior. You have a warrior's heart if you ride a bike. If you don't let the fear try and stop you from riding, don't let it stop you. Get out and ride your bike, and you are a moto warrior. And that's what I wanted to leave you with, my friends. I don't look at you as just viewers. I see you as warriors. I see you as moto warriors. So, moto warriors, I just wanted to say thank you for watching my channel, watching my videos, and for commenting and thumbs up, thumbs down, hitting the bell icon, subscribing, whatever you want to do. But either way, I want to say thank you. And I'm about to be passed by an emergency vehicle here, so I got to let you go. But until next time, moto warriors, y'all ride safe.